Before we begin, a word about what we do here at Nightfall Narratives. We believe that some stories can only be told after the sun goes down, stories of betrayal, survival, and the dark truths we often hide. If these are the stories that speak to you, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss a single one. I'll never forget the day my world just fell apart. The day I realized that the man who was supposed to be my protector, my own father, was a monster. For most of my life, I really believed he was my hero. He was the one who taught me how to ride a bike, the guy who scared away the monsters under my bed. I thought he was the coolest guy in the world. Turns out, the real monster was living in my house all along. His ultimate betrayal left me with absolutely nothing and made me question every single memory I ever had. This is the story of how I found out my dad was a complete fraud and how everything came crashing down. Growing up, my dad was the center of my universe. He had this laugh that could fill a whole room and make you feel like everything was going to be okay. All my friends loved him. I had the cool dad. He wasn't like the other dads who seemed so distant and serious. He was fun. He was my best friend, the one person I thought would never, ever let me down. I remember when I was 8, I was terrified of the diving board at the town pool. All the other kids were launching themselves into the deep end, but I was just frozen at the edge, staring at the water below. My dad didn't push me or tell me to be brave. He climbed right up the ladder, took my hand, and whispered, "Okay, we're a team. Team awesome. We'll do it together." And we did. We held hands and jumped. The splash was glorious. When we came up, sputtering and laughing, he looked at me with so much pride. And in that moment, I felt like I could do anything. He was the dad who built me a custom Hot Wheels dollhouse because he knew I loved cars just as much as dolls. He was the one who stayed up all night with me when I had a science project, patiently explaining the solar system with oranges and grapes on our kitchen table. He coached my softball team, not because he knew a thing about sports, but just because he wanted to be there. He was my hero. He was also the one who taught me about responsibility. When I was 12, he had me balancing a checkbook. He'd sit with me, showing me how to track every single penny. "Money is a tool, pumpkin," he'd say, tapping his pen on the ledger. "It gives you freedom. You have to respect it. You have to be honest with it." He would give these stern lectures about integrity and how a person's word was their bond. I soaked it all up. I believed every single word. My mom died when I was 14. It was fast and brutal, and suddenly it was just the two of us. In all that grief, he became my everything. He was both parents, my steady rock in a storm. He cooked, he cleaned, he helped with homework, and he held me when I cried. He'd sit on the edge of my bed at night, just like when I was little, and promise me, "It's you and me against the world, kiddo. I'm never going anywhere. I'll always protect you." And I believed him. How could I not? He was my dad. This man who taught me about honesty was the bedrock of my life. He'd spent my entire childhood building this image of himself as a protector, a provider, a man of integrity. I wrapped myself up in that, feeling safe, never once imagining it was all a carefully built mask to hide the monster underneath. I loved him with a purity that only a child can have for a parent they think is perfect. But I was wrong. So wrong. The first crack in that perfect facade showed up when I was 17. It wasn't a big, dramatic shatter, more like a tiny fracture I could barely see, but I felt it. It was this little tremor in the foundation of my trust that I tried to ignore, but never really could. My mom had left me a small inheritance meant to be my college fund. It wasn't a life-changing amount, but it was enough. She had set it up in a trust that I'd get when I turned 18. My dad was the trustee, the gatekeeper. For years, he talked about it like it was sacred. "Your mother wanted to make sure you were taken care of," he'd say. "This money is your future. We don't touch it, ever." It was a promise. The summer before my senior year, I got into this amazing pre-college arts program in another state. It was a dream, but it was expensive. The tuition was a few $1,000s, more than I had from my part-time job. I went to my dad, clutching the acceptance letter, my heart pounding. "Dad, I got in," I said, showing him the letter. A slow smile spread across his face. "That's my girl. I knew you could do it." "The only thing is the cost," I said, my voice dropping a little. "It's due in a month. I was thinking, maybe we could use a small part of the college fund. It is for my education after all." Kibera. Lai even hesitated. "Of course," he said, waving his hand like it was nothing. "That's exactly what it's for. Don't you worry about a thing, Pumpkin. I'll handle it." I was so relieved. It was that easy. For the next few weeks, I was on cloud nine. I bought art supplies, planned the trip, and told all my friends. Anytime I asked him if he'd sent the payment, he'd just say, "Yep, all taken care of." A week before I was supposed to leave, I got an email from the program. A final payment reminder. My blood ran cold. I forwarded it to my dad. They said they haven't received the payment. I thought you handled it. He called me a few minutes later, his voice sounding tight. There was a little mix-up with the bank transfer," he said, a little too fast. "Some kind of clerical error. It's a real pain. I'll have to go down there tomorrow and sort it out. Don't worry." But I did worry. A knot formed in my stomach. The next day, I waited for his call. Nothing. I texted him. No reply. When he came home from work that night, he looked exhausted and agitated. "Did you sort it out?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He sighed, running a hand over his face. "Look, honey, I need to be honest. The market took a bit of a dip, a really unexpected one. I had the money invested, trying to make it grow a little for you, and the timing was just bad. It's not a big deal, we just need to wait for it to recover. We might have to postpone the arts program. Maybe you can go next year." I just stared at him, my brain trying to catch up. "Invested? You invested my college fund? You always said we never touch it." "I was trying to help you to make it more for you," he said, his voice rising. "These things happen. It's the world of finance. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." He was using that tone, the patient, slightly patronizing one, like a father teaching his kid. But this time, it felt wrong. It felt like a deflection. It felt like a lie. I remembered seeing the old bank statements for the trust account. It wasn't an investment account. It was a simple trust. "Can I see the statement?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. His face got dark. "Why, don't you trust me? After everything I've done for you, I'm your father." His anger was so sudden it felt like a slap. I physically recoiled. I had never questioned him before, ever. To question him was to question my entire life. "No, of course I trust you," I mumbled, backing down immediately. "I was just curious." He saw me retreat, and his whole demeanor softened. He pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry, Pumpkin, it's been a stressful week. I promise I'll fix this. We'll figure it out." I let him hug me, but for the first time, it didn't feel safe. It felt like a cage. I never went to the arts program. We never talked about it again. But the crack was there. A tiny, spider-webbing fracture in my perfect hero. And late at night, I'd lie awake and wonder, what was he really hiding? I told myself I was being paranoid. But a seed of doubt had been planted, and I was starting to realize that the man who taught me everything about honesty was capable of being anything but. After the arts program thing, life seemed to go back to normal, but it was a new kind of normal. One where a quiet suspicion was always humming just beneath the surface. I ended up going to a local state college and living at home to save money. That dream of a faraway art school became this ghost that haunted me, a reminder of the first broken promise. My dad was as charming and loving as ever, but now I was watching him. I started noticing things. The betrayals escalated, starting with control disguised as concern. When I turned 18, the college fund was legally mine. But my dad convinced me it would be smarter if he stayed on the account, for tax purposes and to help me manage it. "You're busy with school," he said with that disarming smile. "Let your old dad handle the boring paperwork." Young and still wanting to believe in my hero, I agreed. It seemed loving. In reality, it was just him keeping his hands on the key. Then the borrowing started, a few $100s here and there. Just until my next commission check comes in, pumpkin. The real estate market is slow. He always paid it back at first, but soon he was borrowing more often, larger amounts, and the repayments got slower. When I'd gently bring it up, he'd act wounded. "Are you keeping a tally on your own father? I'm not some deadbeat. I'm family." He made me feel cheap for asking for my own money. Then he started lecturing me about my asterisk spending. I'd buy a pair of jeans and he'd sigh. "You need to learn the value of $1, honey. You're being frivolous." He was spending my inheritance while making me feel guilty for buying anything myself. I started to second-guess every single purchase, feeling this constant anxiety about money that wasn't even his. His control started bleeding eye. NTO other parts of my life. He'd criticize my friends. "That girl, Sarah, she's a bad influence, too flighty with money." He'd show up at my part-time job at the campus bookstore just to say hi, but then he'd linger, watching me, making my manager uncomfortable. He was isolating me, making sure his was the only voice in my head. The summer after my sophomore year, I got an internship in the city. It was my chance for a little independence. I found a cheap sublet with some other students, and I was ecstatic. My dad was not. "It's dangerous in the city," he insisted. "You'll waste so much money on rent, it's irresponsible. You should live here and commute." "It's a 2-hour commute each way, Dad. I'll be exhausted. This is part of the experience." We had a huge argument. It ended with him delivering the killing blow, his voice totally cold. "You've changed. You've become selfish and ungrateful. After everything I've sacrificed, this is how you repay me, by abandoning me." That word, abandoning, was a knife in the heart. He knew it was my deepest fear, a wound that was still raw from my mother's death. I was flooded with guilt. Was he right? Was I a bad daughter? I ended up compromising. I took the internship but commuted 3 days a week. It was grueling and left me drained, but he had won. He had put me back in my place. The worst part during this time was the slow draining of my college fund. I tried to track it online, but he made it confusing. Money would move from the trust to a joint account, then to a high-yield savings account he'd opened. There were huge withdrawals, $5, $000 here, $10,000 there, that he'd explain away with vague talk about market opportunities. When I questioned a large transfer, he'd sit me down with a stack of papers filled with jargon that made my head spin, using the very words about fiscal responsibility he'd taught me, but twisting them against me. He made me feel stupid. I remember seeing a withdrawal for $15,000. I confronted him, my heart pounding. "Dad, what is this? This is a huge amount of money." He didn't even look up from his newspaper. "It's a real estate investment trust. Very stable. Got a hot tip. This is going to set you up for years, honey. You should be thanking me." I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand proof, call the bank, and hire a lawyer. But I was 20, living under his roof, and totally tangled up in his web. The thought of accusing my only family of being a thief was terrifying. It was just easier to believe the lie, to hope my hero was still in there somewhere. He was counting on my love and my fear to keep me quiet, and for a while, it worked. We're about to reach the turning point of this story, and it's a good moment to remember what Nightfall Narratives is all about. We delve into the difficult truths that change everything. If you find value in confronting these realities, please consider subscribing to support the channel. Now, back to the story. The day my world finally imploded started with a letter. It was my last year of college, and I was applying for my first real apartment. I needed to pay a security deposit and the first month's rent. For the first time in a long time, I felt a real spark of excitement about a future that was actually mine. I logged into my online banking to move the money from my trust fund, the fund that was supposed to launch my new life. The balance read $217.34. I just stared at the screen. That couldn't be right, a glitch. It had to be. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I refreshed the page. $217.34. I clicked on the transaction history, my hands shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. And there it was, a graveyard of broken promises, a list of withdrawals stretching back years, small at first, then bigger and bigger chunks. The $15,000 investment was there, but so were countless others. $5,000 transferred to an account I didn't recognize. $20,000 moved to a credit card payment. Thousands of dollars in cash withdrawals from ATMs near casinos and racetracks, places my dad swore he never went. The money wasn't invested. It was just gone, all of it. The money my mother had worked so hard for, her last gift to me, had been completely drained. The room felt like it was closing in. I couldn't breathe. Every lecture about responsibility, every warning about my asterisk spending, every promise to take care of things, it all replayed in my head, but now it was sinister. Every memory was a lie. I stumbled out to the living room and found him watching golf on TV like it was any other day. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. "Hey, pumpkin, what's up?" I held up my laptop, the screen glowing with the evidence. My voice came out in a strangled whisper. "Where is it? Where's the money?" His smile faded. He squinted at the screen, then his face settled into that familiar mask of weary patience. "Ah," he sighed, "I was going to talk to you about this. It's been a tough year. The market has been brutal." "Don't," I choked out. "Don't you dare lie to me again. The market, or the racetrack, the casinos, I saw the withdrawals, Dad." For a split second, I saw panic in his eyes. The mask slipped, and then it was gone, replaced by something cold and hard. He stood up, his whole demeanor shifting from concerned father to cornered animal. "You went behind my back, snooping through my financial records," he snarled, turning it on me. "After I have housed you, fed you, and put up with your attitude for years. Your records, it was my asterisk money, Mom's money, you stole it. You stole my entire future." I was screaming, hot tears streaming down my face. The dam just burst. I did what I had to do to survive. He yelled back, his face turning red. Do you have any idea how expensive you are? The bills, the mortgage, the food. You think it's easy. You're a burden. You've always been a burden. That was it. That was the moment. The word burden. It hit me with actual physical force. It was the complete opposite of every "I'll protect you" and "it's you and me against the world." It was the ugly truth he had hidden for so long. The man I thought was my hero didn't see me as a daughter. He saw me as an expense. And my mother's legacy wasn't a sacred gift. It was just a piggy bank for him to raid. He wasn't a flawed hero who made mistakes. He was a fraud, a parasite who had fed on my trust to fund his own selfish life. In that one horrifying moment, the image I had of him didn't just crack. It shattered into a million pieces, revealing the monster that had been there all along. The grief was overwhelming, but it wasn't for the money. It was for the father who never really existed. I looked at the stranger standing in front of me, his face twisted with rage. There was no apology, only the selfish anger of a thief who'd been caught. I felt nothing but a cold, vast emptiness. "Get out," I said, my voice suddenly calm. The screaming was gone. He laughed this short, ugly sound. "Get out. This is my house. You're the one who will be leaving with nothing." He was right. The lease, the furniture, everything was his. My bank account had $217. He hadn't just stolen my past, he had stolen my present and future, too. He had left me completely, utterly destitute. And as I stood there, broken and disowned in the house I grew up in, I finally understood. He wasn't just a monster. He was my monster. The hours and days that followed are kind of a blur of shock and pure panic. The fight ended with him pointing to the door. His last words were, "You have 1 hour to pack a bag and get out. You are no longer my daughter." I moved like a robot, just throwing clothes, my laptop, and a few small things into a duffel bag. My hands were shaking when I picked up a framed photo of my mom and me. Her smiling face felt like it was from another dimension, a life where I felt safe. Every object in that house was now tainted. I walked out the front door and didn't look back. The click of the lock behind me was the sound of my entire life being cut in two. I had $217, a half tank of gas, and literally nowhere to go. The reality of being homeless was a cold, terrifying slap. I spent the first night in my car in a grocery store parking lot. Sleep was impossible. My mind just kept replaying the fight, his vicious words, the coldness in his eyes. The word burden was on a loop, branding itself onto my soul. Was that all I ever was to him? The next few days were a desperate scramble. I couch-surfed with friends from college who didn't really get what was happening. I couldn't tell them the whole story. I mean, how do you explain that your dad, the one they all thought was so great, stole your inheritance and threw you out on the street? It sounds like a bad movie. So I just said, "My dad and I had a huge fight about money. I just need a place to stay for a bit." The shame was a physical weight. I was a charity case. I was completely adrift. I tried to keep going to class, but I couldn't focus. The words on the page were just a blur. I had to drop out of my final semester. I couldn't afford it, and I couldn't function. That failure was just another layer of devastation. The education my mother's money was meant for was gone, too. The grief was so complicated. I wasn't just mourning my father, I was mourning my entire childhood. I grieved for the little girl who thought her dad was a hero. I felt so stupid for not seeing it sooner. The signs had been there, but I chose to believe the lie because it was easier than the truth. A week after he kicked me out, I got a text from him. It wasn't an apology. It was a demand. "You left your car insurance bill here. It's past due. You need to learn to be responsible." Reading that, something inside me just snapped. The grief and fear were suddenly pierced by this white-hot anger. Responsibility? Was he lecturing me about responsibility? The audacity was just breathtaking. But that anger, as painful as it was, became a lifeline. It was the fuel I needed to start fighting back. I got a job waiting tables at a dingy 24-hour diner. The work was brutal, the pay was awful, but it was mine. Every dollar I earned was a small act of defiance, proof that I could survive without him. I rented a tiny, run-down room on the bad side of town. The lock was flimsy, and the shared bathroom was gross, but it was my space. It was the first place that felt safe. The fallout was also social. The extended family heard his side of the story, that I was an ungrateful, unstable daughter who made up crazy accusations, and they stopped talking to me. He was erasing me from the family, isolating me completely. The betrayal was so absolute, it left a vacuum where my life used to be. I was truly alone. Rebuilding my life from the ashes felt less like a phoenix rising and more like a scavenger picking through rubble. For the first year, my only goal was survival. I worked double shifts at the diner and saved every penny. I was exhausted down to my bones, but there was a strange satisfaction in it. My work was my own. No one could take it from me. That tiny room became my sanctuary. I bought a cheap hot plate and learned to cook. I painted the peeling walls a bright, defiant yellow. It wasn't much, but it was a foundation, the first brick I laid in a life that was only mine. The anger I felt toward my father started to change. It became a cold, hard resolve. I started looking into my legal options. I found a legal aid clinic and told my story to a young law student who listened with a mix of horror and validation. For the first time, someone looked at me and didn't see a victim to be pitied. They saw a wrong that needed to be righted. The legal battle was long and ugly. My father hired an expensive lawyer who tried to paint me as an unstable liar. They twisted my grief over my mother's death into a sign of psychological weakness. It was brutal, forcing me to relive every lie in a sterile deposition room. But I had something he didn't. The truth, all documented in black and white. We had the bank statements. We had the ATM records from the casinos. The paper trail of his deception was undeniable. The turning point was when the judge ordered a full forensic accounting of the trust. The final report was damning. It laid out, in excruciating detail, years of systematic theft. There were no market dips. There was only a father plundering his daughter's inheritance. I won the civil suit. The judge awarded me a judgment for the full amount he had stolen. It was a hollow victory in some ways. I knew I'd probably never see a dime. He declared bankruptcy almost immediately, a final cowardly act. But it was never really about the money. It was about the truth. It was about hearing a judge in a court of law say that I was not crazy, I was not a liar, and that I had been wronged. That judgment was my liberation. Today, my life is quiet, and it's my own. I eventually went back to school at night and finished my degree. I work as a graphic designer now. I have a small, sunny apartment that I cherish and a few close friends who know the whole story. I haven't spoken to my father since that day. I sometimes see him in my mind, the hero who taught me to ride a bike, and the monster who called me a burden. I've learned to hold both images at once, to acknowledge the good memories while understanding they were part of a lie. Forgiveness isn't on the table for me, not yet. Maybe never. But I've moved past the hatred. He no longer takes up space in my head. The most important thing I've learned is that I am not a burden. My worth was never tied to a bank account, and it was never determined by a man incapable of love. I am the woman who rebuilt her life from nothing. I am the woman who fought for the truth and won. I'm my own protector now, and that is a freedom no one can ever steal from me. Thank you for being a part of our community here at Nightfall Narratives. We're dedicated to bringing these important, often painful, stories out of the shadows. Subscribing is the best way to ensure more stories like this can be told. My story is my own, but I know the feelings of betrayal and the struggle to rebuild are universal. So many of us have had our trust shattered by the people who were supposed to protect us. If you've been through something similar, if this story resonates with you, I hope you'll share your experience in the comments. You're not alone in this. Reading your stories helps me, and it might just help someone else feel seen. Thank you for listening to my story. It's not easy to tell, but it feels important. If there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that discovering a terrible truth, as painful as it is also a gift. It's the gift of clarity. It frees you from the lie, and in that freedom, you can finally begin to build a life that is Hone's. True and completely your own. Take care of yourselves and each other.